Hey there, I'm Brandon. This is the Dirt Church Devotional. Let me ask you, have you ever let your ego get in the way of your common sense? It happens sometimes, and if you're like me, when it happens, it can usually run into problems. We'll talk about that in a second. Last week, I think it was last week, I started talking about James chapter 1, and in the first 4 verses or so, James is talking about, consider it pure joy when you face troubles and trials of all kinds, because the testing of your faith produces endurance and perseverance and whatnot, and it perfects you. And then he stops after verse 4, and it's almost as if he shifts gears. And if we're not careful, we'll take them as separate things, but really it's all the same thought, because later on in the chapter, he goes back to enduring. So, in verse 5, though, he makes a statement that a lot of times in the church we love to grab hold of. I love to grab hold of it. And he says this, he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives freely without finding fault. But, he puts a caveat in there, but if you are going to ask, you got to ask in faith. You got to believe. Because if you don't believe, you're like a person that looks in the mirror and then goes away and forgets what he looks like. All right, so let's get back to the ego issue. Years ago when I was working at Boeing, we had a job come in. I worked in precision tool grind. We had a job come in, and essentially it was a fixture. I had to have a tooling ball set in a particular spot, and I had checked it out on the machine that I ran and could confirm that it was a good part. It was going to take some work, but it was a good part. Well, I worked swing shift, day shift had control of the whole thing, came back the next day and it hadn't been done, and they were discussing different ways to do it. And long story short, my boss, my supervisor came to me and he says, hey, you said that was a good part, can you do it? And I said, yeah. I just jumped right up. I'm good. Yeah, I can do that. Well, what I didn't tell you is overnight somebody dropped the fixture and broke the fixture. So the part was no longer on the fixture. So we didn't have the indexing points for it. But I knew that the part was good. And my ego says, yes, I can do this. And so my boss says, all right, but if you're going to do it, you got to get it done, because it's my neck and it's your neck if you don't get it done. I said, I can do this. I said, but I might need some overtime, whatever you need, but got to do it this shift. So, all right, fine. So I get started, and an hour into it, don't have it set up. 2 hours into it, 3 hours into it, I don't have it set up. The boss keep coming in, and how's it going? And it's going fine, it's going fine. 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours into it, and I don't have it set up, and I am just starting to pull my hair out. And real quickly, I just remembered, you know what? God said we can ask for wisdom. So I said, Lord, I need some help here. I put myself out here. I put the boss out here. I need some help here. I know it's a good part. And in a matter of moments, literally probably less than 30 seconds, this formula, this mathematical formula popped into my head. I'd never seen before, never heard of before. And real quick, I wrote it down. And I began to plug the numbers in. And I went over to the machine and I plugged the numbers in there, and wouldn't you know it, perfectly lined up. Now I say all that to say this. When James says you got to believe when you ask, God wants to give you wisdom. He wants to help you through the hard times, whether they're hard times that you brought on yourself or they're hard times that came on you from some other place. He wants to help, but you got to ask. But you got to act on it. You got to ask with faith, believing. That means sometimes you're going to have to step out and do something or say something or go somewhere. It doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense. But if you'll trust God, it'll work. He wants to help. He wants you to ask. He wants to give you the wisdom. But don't override it with your pride, with your ego. All right? Let God give you the wisdom that you asked for, but you got to step up and use it. Chew on that. We'll talk to you next time.